One morning I get a call from my publisher saying, Joel, go on Amazon, take a look at all the top 100. I'm like, what am I looking for? He's like, your book's silly. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. So I go on and I see 2, and Michelle Obama was at number 3. And I was like, wow, even Stephen Covey, I was ahead of him.
From Six Story, I'm your producer, Diana Hong, and you're listening to Rev Up Your Potential with Hilda Gann, the show where we talk with the entrepreneur next door about the stories behind their success and the lessons they've learned along the way. Today's guest is the co-founder of WRLWND, a digital marketing, creative, and communications agency that specializes in brand development and management. In today's episode, he'll share the story of starting a courier business at the age of 19, how to improve SEO and rank higher on search engines, how to write and launch your own book, and so much more. So please enjoy our conversation with Joel Mandelbaum.
Today's guest is Joel Mandelbaum. He is the co-founder of an agency called WRLWND, and he is like the online digital Sherpa. So, Joel, can you start by just giving us a high-level overview of your journey as a business owner and as an entrepreneur?
I started my journey, if you will, business journey, way long before I was 19. When I was little, I actually my dad used to work for the cable company, and he used to bring back in the day, cable wires. Back in the day, they would be color coded. So there'd be multiple colors with multiple, specs of different color, and I used to make these little rings. And then I'd go in the neighborhood and sell them for 5 cents each. The big houses, I would sell them at 25 cents each. My grandfather said, although you can't judge a book by its cover, you have to hold people to the way they perceive themselves. So, and that's where I started thinking, wow, money, business, I can make a little extra money. And this was even before I had an allowance. So that was pretty cool. And then throughout my life, I was just always entrepreneurial. I always wanted to just create something. Finally, at 19, when I was graduating high school, I said to my dad, okay, I'm graduating high school. He's like, you're going to university? I'm like, yep. All right, you're going to pay for it, right? He was like, no, I don't think so. And I was, well, then I'm not going. He said, well, you're 19, you can make your own decisions. And I thought, I'm fed up with school. Remember, this coming from a 19-year-old brain. Mm-hmm. And I thought, you know what, I want to be independent from my parents. I want to make money. I want to get out into the real world. So at 19, after I graduated, I took some money that I had saved up. I bought my first car. At the time was a 1981 Honda Accord, and started my first courier business back in 1988. It grew to almost a 100-person organization in 2 countries, and I sold that in 2012, and then got into the digital space just because I loved it, and I saw what it could do and help people. So that's kind of where I am today, and then wrote the book last year, and yeah, here I am today, just enjoying helping business owners.
And if for those who are listening versus online, there's this huge TV screen. Well, I guess it's not called a TV screen anymore. There's this huge monitor that has Joel Mandelbaum Winning Online, a book that he's wrote. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But I want to explore a little bit more about that entrepreneur at the age of 19 starting his own company. Tell us a little bit more, why the courier company? Maybe you like to drive your car, but tell us why that courier company, and how did you build it to 100 people and to 2 countries? That's impressive, obviously, amazing. So share with us some of the highlights and maybe some of the struggles, but let's start with the highlights.
Sure. So what drives a 19-year-old to start a business? Well, I've always wanted to, excuse the language, be free. And free when I was really little, when I wasn't old enough to get a bicycle, I wanted a bicycle because I could move more quickly and be more free. So when I got a bicycle, I felt in heaven. And then I guess around 19 and graduating high school, I had a friend of mine he was driving as a courier at the time. And he showed me the list when he goes out of town, how much money he makes. I thought, oh, I could drive to London, Ontario and make $150 back in the day. And I thought that's a pretty good way to make money. So I decided to become a courier. I worked for another company for about 6 months because I had graduated at a high school in February of 1988. Then I went to university. I took a couple of courses there and I thought, nah, not for me. My dad wasn't going to pay full time. I didn't really have much of an income at the time. I was pumping gas at a gas station, and that was about it. So what I did was I took my money, I bought a car. My parents were freaking out. What do you buy a car for? I said, because I'm going to start a courier business. Because when I worked for that other courier business, I really enjoyed driving. Again, the freedom aspect. I'm around. I don't have to be in an office. I don't have to answer to anybody. Yep. I can just do my deliveries. And I get a big chunk of the value of that delivery. And I fell in love with it. And what actually happened, the company that I worked for went out of business. They got bought out by another courier business. And in the courier industry, you generally buy a customer's list and that's it. Mm-hmm. So I went to the owner and I said, look, the company just bought, they owed me money and I really need the money. And he said, well, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. You got to go after them. Do you want to work for me? And I was like, I want my money. And he said that, he pretty much told me to scoot off. It was a little disrespectful. So I'm walking out to my car. I remember thinking, oh my God, the first anxiety I remember I had in business was like, what am I going to do with all these bills and this and that? Yeah. So I sat at home one night and I'm looking at what's called my run sheet. And a run sheet is where you put every delivery on by hand back in the day. It's all electronic now. And I'm looking. And I'm looking at all my run sheets. I'm like, wait a minute. I could go after these customers. I mean, I'm desperate. I need to make some money. I spoke to a friend of mine. He said, well, you better check out that you don't have a non-compete. Well, they didn't make me sign anything. So what did I do? I started calling all those companies. Now, remember, I was 19. And I looked it. So you want to imagine a 19-year-old walking into an office, talking to a receptionist that probably in her, and I'll remember this because it was my second client. My first client was a small little company that only gave me one delivery ever, but it was my first delivery. And I thought, great, I'm going to make 100% of that for me doing it. And then the second company I went to, they're no longer in business. So they were bought out. It's a company called Cliffside. It was a construction company. And back in those days, you'd be delivering checks, some out of town. So I walked in and this woman looks at me. She says, don't you work for that other courier company? I said, yeah, they went out of business. They sold to somebody else. And she said, well, what are you going to do better? And the only thing I could think of back then, being with limited sales information knowledge, I said I could beat their prices. She said, could you beat them by 10%, do you think? And I said, you know what? I'll beat them by 20. Now, I wouldn't do that today, but, look, I'm 19. I've got bills going. I've got this company back then probably sent out about $400 worth of deliveries a week. And I thought, wow, okay. So not when I sold them, it was now 300 or whatever. But then I thought, wow, this is great. So I put a cell phone in my car. It was back in 1988, where cell phones were in the thousands of dollars. But there was a deal I found for $20 a month. And so I put in a cell phone. I started going around, made a list of all those customers, built the business, customer by customer by customer, cold calling, following up, and just doing what I knew had to be done. And the reason I started understanding is because I started taking self-development courses. Like Brian Tracy was my mentor back in the day. My first course that I listened to was the Psychology of Selling with Brian Tracy. So I was a student on, in my car. I figured I'm driving. Maybe I can get a university education on wheels, which continued over and over and over. Then guess around the year 2000, about 2000, 1999, 98, I expanded into the Buffalo market. I had a vice president at the time. I said, let's look at that market to do delayed baggage back to Toronto. Big money. And then 9/11 hit. And 90% of my US business was airlines. And we know what happened in 9/11. Airlines were grounded, froze up, so my business vaporized overnight. So here was a massive challenge that I'd never experienced before. Payroll, all of this, where this company in the US is not making any money and it's being drained from my Canadian. So we pivoted very quickly, started getting into air freight and built up the US. And then one day in 2012, I realized that I had lost kind of the passion for the business. I had a good offer and sold, and then got into digital, and that was my journey in building the business as a 19-year-old. I did it all, by the seat of my pants.
So was this the school of hard knocks? Like, how did you learn how to be a business owner? Because there are so many things that we have to learn. We have to learn the finance, the cash flow, even the human resources, because you said now you had people, you had a vice president. So I'm still thinking about the 19-year-old running, running around by himself in a car. And now you fast forward about a decade later and you've got vice presidents. How did you learn how to build all the aspects that a business owner has to learn how to do? And I don't even know where your education comes from, but all I'm hearing is high school. So what happened along the way?
Yeah, after high school, as I said, I went to York University for a couple of credits, psychology and natural science, just because I thought it would be something to do, and realized, no, I'm not for school. I can't handle it anymore. I need to get out and create something. So what happened was, as I built the business, for the first probably 3-4 years, maybe 5 years almost, I was the only driver. And I built it up driver by driver. The issue in that industry, and maybe in a lot of industries now, is the balance of customers and drivers, because your drivers are all independent contractors. Mm-hmm. So they get a percentage of the order. But if you don't have enough deliveries for the drivers, you lose drivers, then your service drops. If you have too many drivers, your customers are happy, but they're not making enough money. So you have too few drivers, you lose. So it was a balancing act for 24 years. I wish that on nobody. Well, I do wish that on my competitors, but from a business perspective, but it was the balance. So I had a lot of help in terms of self-learning. I sought the advice of a lot of people that were older than me that were in business. So I had multiple mentors, because there's no way in the world you're going to do it yourself, be successful. It's always with a team, Yeah. I had to learn every single nuance about building a business. And when something happened that was a learning experience, I instantly learned and applied that right away. I don't believe in luck. I believe that you still create your luck if there is. Yeah. So if someone wins the lottery, it's not luck. They had to still go buy the ticket. They still had to put themselves in the situation. So School of Hard Knocks had a lot of help. I read a lot of books and just had a vision in my head of what I wanted to see.
Yeah. Thanks for that advice, Joel, because I think people need to understand that even though you start your own business, you do need supports, and it comes from various places. You've talked about self-learning, you've talked about mentors. And I know when we started our company, the one that my husband and I had before People Bright, we started it in the mid-90s. And so to help people really understand your true journey is that even in the mid-90s, Google was not what it was today. You could not go in and Google, what are the legislative concerns I have with my business? You could not even ask that question because there was no logarithm to ask it, let alone have the information at hand. So today's business owner has it a bit luckier because they can get that self-knowledge instantaneously. Right. But I remember myself thinking, I need somebody to help me with this. Where am I going to find this person? There was no Google to find these opportunities. So I appreciate you sharing that School of Hard Knocks and being open to being guided and get advice from a variety of sources, because that really helps you with your ideation. It helps you with gaining knowledge. And I love our show because I love to bring people on to give people stories to help them learn. And you may capture an idea from things that we say or a lesson learned so that you say, okay, thanks for that, because I will never, do that because now I know the ramifications of doing that. Let's talk now a little bit about your selling the company. You said, I had enough. How did that come to being? Because we as business owners, day in, day out, we are working so hard to make it successful in all areas, whether it's the people side, the finance, the sales, marketing. You said, I had enough. 24 years is a long time, and you built it up very successfully. What was that point in your journey that said, okay, it's time to sell, and this offer came through?
There's two subjects I never get into, is religion and politics, of course. But I do believe that something is listening out there.
Okay.
Something is, whether you want to call it your God, your universe, whatever that might be, that something is out there. So I remember thinking one day, we had a bunch of driver issues. We had just replaced a bunch of drivers. And I can't remember the article I was reading. And I sat back at my desk and went, man, I wish I could sell my company and do something else. I've just been doing it, so I'm tired of the drivers, the this, the that, because anyone that's ever been in transportation will be nodding their head, either listening or watching, knowing it's always that balancing act. So you can never actually be 100% calm with your business because, oh, we lost a driver. Oh, driver late delivery. Oh, just so many things that can go wrong when you're dealing with so many people, so many dynamics, so many variables. Then you get into personality clashes because you're in HR.
Yep.
So one day I just said I had enough. That, and I guess someone heard me say that, said it to a customer, and within 4 hours, I get a phone call from one of my largest competitors saying, I hear you want to sell your business. I went like this. Yes. I looked straight up and I was like, I just said that a few hours ago. How do you know that?
Yeah.
Well, it ended up that, one of my staff heard that and freaked out. I was just mentioning it out there. And then, so he called me, we met, we worked out on a napkin, the deal. One of the things was that he must hire all my staff, must give my drivers a chance.
Good for you. Yep.
And he also created a job for my dispatcher. My vice president, he decided to do his own thing, which great. Even though he ran the U.S. division, he sold the U.S. division to an American company. And I did all right. I did okay. I didn't like when, you hear these stories. Yeah, you sold your business for millions of dollars and retired and bored and not knowing what to do. That wasn't me. I sold it. I was happy with the sale. It allowed me to take a little bit of time off and allow me to think what I want to do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then after I sold it, I met someone who was the competitor. And I said, you were a great competitor. And we joked around a bit. She said, let's go to lunch. I'll take you over to my office. You're not in the business anymore. And I trust you're not going to go after my clients. Because I told him my story when I was 19. I'm like, yeah, cool. And that's when something hit me, Hilda. I was like, after that lunch, it was a depressing lunch. And the reason it was a depressing lunch is because I went into his office. He had less than a quarter the staff I did. He was 4 times the size of my business. He had 4 times the drivers. His office was quiet. And I look around. I said, oh, is everyone on lunch? He said, no, everyone's here. And I was like, where is everybody? He says, oh, no, we don't. We do X amount of hundreds of deliveries per day. I said, well, yeah, no. I use automation. I use this. And where I fell, the big learning lesson to me was, instead of keeping my mind open to learning and continually learning forever, when I started becoming very successful and our figures were in the low sixes,
mm-hmm.
sorry, low sevens.
Low sevens,
Yes, yeah. And, it went to my head as a young person in my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, wow, you know what? I've got the Midas touch. I'll make a lot of money. And I stopped learning. So when people started saying you should start looking online and you should start looking at ways to market your business online, what I did is I made the mistake, which is where a lot of my clients have made the same mistake, of not doing my proper research as to what I should and shouldn't do in terms of online marketing. So I just thought, okay, get on the first page of Google, you get calls. So I ran a Google ad campaign. My budget was like just a few $100s for the month, which I got to tell you, if you're going to run any type of paid campaign, Google, Facebook, the smaller your budget, the less it's going to work. Unless you're serious about building your business, someone comes to you and says, yeah, we can do a campaign for $100 or a couple $100 a month. You're not going to get the results. Maybe you'll get it lucky, but chances are you're not going to get the results. So I threw a few $100 at it and I didn't get a call. So the SEO guy called me and says, yeah, you got to send 1,000 this month. I said, nah, this doesn't work. I get my clients, I go cold calling, I get this. I'm going to do it the way I've always done it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a saying for that. It's called, I'll do what I've always done-itis. And that was where my fatal mistake was because had I known what I know today, it would have been a much different story, because I would have embraced the technology. You know, even though we go kicking and screaming, and as business owners, we think we know it all, we don't. Yeah. Unless you're making millions a year, you can still improve your business.
Right.
There's always ways of growing and scaling, of course, your goals. So at the end, when I had that V8 moment after having that lunch, something just clicked. And I said, you know what? I know I'm going to start another business, but I'm not going to start another business until I understand what it takes to win online. And that was kind of what in my head.
And hence the name of the book.
That's the name of the book. So I spent I spent a year and a half just sourcing people out that not necessarily were famous for being known for digital marketers and stuff, because I really didn't care about the fluff. I wanted to see what people who had done different results, and is it possible to get way ahead of the curve? So I started thinking, you know, maybe I need to go out there, I need to meet people, I need to network, I need to find those top people that have already succeeded and figure it out for themselves what it is. So my journey started with the first tech company that I worked with. I still do some work with them, a company called IOPW, and they built some really crazy platforms. And I'm fortunate to say that I have a small stake in that company, but they developed some things that I thought were impossible. So, you know, when I met with them, I saw what they were able to accomplish for their clients. Like in one case, I saw they had clients literally on every page, the first page of every search engine, without paying for ads. And I said, well, how do you guys do that? I thought it's impossible to get to page one. You know, I learned a lot, and that's where my journey started going. And I got excited because I saw something that could maybe help the people I know that were business owners from my past career, if you will. So I started realizing that this is really important. How can I help business owners win online? And just through being with top people over the last 7 years, pretty much almost 8 years, I learned it and I became a geek. An official geek. And I started realizing I'm talking to business owners about online. I'm giving them advice just because I like to do that. And business owners started saying to me, you know, you should write a book. I really learned a lot by you meeting today. And I had this really great feeling. Hey, that's awesome. I educated them. Even if I didn't close a deal or make a sale, I was still excited. I thought, And, you know, if one person tells you to do something, take it with a grain of salt. But when a bunch of people start telling you the same thing and they're unrelated, you may want to start looking into that. It really took a lot of work, effort, energy, getting up early. What I did, though, was funny. When I was younger and started the business, I would sleep in until the first order came in because I was young. I was like my early teens, still wanted to go out. So I go out late and people are like, don't you have to get up early for work? I go, yeah, usually I get my first call around 8:30. And I remember one time my first call was at 6. It was for a company called Auto Trader that I'm sure you've heard of. Back in the day,
yes.
Right, we used to go to the airport, pick up all the film from all the different Auto Trader areas across Canada, bring them to Auto Trader head office, and they'd process it, put it in the magazine. Well, we got an emergency call. So I wake up like 6, like, split second, can I help you? She's like, Joel, we need something to get to so-and-so today. Can you do it? Can you do it? I'm like, oh, yeah, I can do it. Where is it? Oh, Windsor. They're like, how much is it going to cost to go to Windsor? And I was still halfway. I said, to get there today, it's probably cost you around $400. And back in that time, Windsor was about $200, $250. I just figured out. They said, okay. And then I went, I should have said $500. But I took it, went out there. That's kind of how it started. And then I hired a dispatcher. He worked in my bedroom. So what we did is we had we were in a townhouse. So I had the company come in and drill a hole to put an antenna on the top of the townhouse. Now, I remember this is a condominium complex. I didn't get approval from the board either, but I did it. But they thought it was so cute. This little 19-year-old, 20-year-old is starting his business and all that. They let me do it. So my bedroom was my office. It was me and another driver and a dispatcher. I got all the gravy runs, of course, because that's what I wanted. It was my business. I was going to do what I wanted. And I just grew from there. And then I got an office a few years later, built another office, and just grew and then expanded. And then the one day that I said, I've had enough, it happened. So be careful what you say.
During those years that you ran the business as a courier company, what was maybe one of the biggest struggles for you?
When we were in business about 10 years, so this is probably late 90s, I had a driver strike. So there was this one driver who wasn't a great driver. He was always late in the morning. Late means that you have to be on your radio before 8 a.m. Roll call is at 8 a.m. Get the deliveries going from yesterday, pick up this, that. This driver was always late, complaining, but I had a driver shortage at the time. So I just kind of took who I could until we hired enough good people. And also being a courier driver as an independent contractor, having your own vehicle, it's not the most glamorous job, nor do you make a lot of money because you have to pay all your expenses, gas, insurance, all of that stuff. But it's a nice transitional job to get some cash in the meantime.
Yeah.
So this driver kind of, she said, yeah, we want more money. We want this, we want that. And one morning I come in and my dispatcher calls me and he says, Joel, we only have 2 drivers on the road. The other 7 are in the office. They want to quit. They're making demands. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
What do I do? I mean, I've got deliveries going. I've got clients calling. I don't have anyone to do the deliveries. 2 drivers when you need 9 or whatever the time I had. I had just under 10 at that time. So I get into the office and the first guy who is the troublemaker, I bring him into my office and I just looked up, I said, just make me do what I need to do. So I bring the first guy into my office. I usually close the door after, just for privacy, but for some reason I didn't close the door. He sits down, I look at him. I said, you're fired. We don't need your services anymore. Get out of here. You'll pick up your next check. This is enough. You're done. And then I stood up, walked out where everyone was listening. I said, who else wants to be fired? If you don't want to work here anymore, leave the packages, bring in your radio, and that's it. You're all subcontractors. If you didn't like it, then you can go to another company. There is no more. And I knew some of these guys had families. They'd been with me for years. One bad apple can really turn a toxic place into toxicity and spread. We all know that now. And one other driver got up and left with the first driver. All the other ones stayed. And I was so this courage came up within me that I had never felt before because I really felt this was now maybe my survival instincts kicked in.
Yeah, yeah.
This guy's the bad cancer. I need to cut it out and I'll figure it out after. Now, I was going to go on the road, get my dispatcher, an order taker to go on the road and do all that stuff. It was all gelling. That was a tough time. I remember that. It was so stressful. We managed and we grew. Life throws you challenges. If you don't have any challenges in your business, you don't have a business. Your business isn't growing.
And I think as an entrepreneur, if you find challenges, little and big, overwhelming, then this is not the life for you. You have to be able to expect the unexpected, to rise to that, to almost feel an adrenaline rush and to learn to solve it. So, thank you for sharing that because somehow you were guided to make this instant decision and let the chips fall where they may, so to speak, right? But that is what we as business owners need to do, is sometimes we have to make those tough decisions. And toxicity is really poisonous. It envelops your organization. And so many clients and colleagues that I've talked to, when we identify there is somebody who is creating, it is the centerpiece for that negativity, for the toxicity, there's sometimes that reluctance to get rid of it. But when they do, they suddenly realize, I don't know why I didn't do that sooner. Sometimes in the actual termination, there is almost this instant relief and this instant change in the culture and in the environment. And people are so glad that you as the business owner took the courage to finally get rid of that toxic person, and life goes on and things evolve and change. And sometimes in the aftermath, we'll talk and the business owner says, I don't know why it took me so long. I'm so glad I did it. And that's a lesson learned for next time, that they won't take so long. They won't let it get to a point where it is really poisonous, that they'll cut it out sooner and make the difference. So thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that.
You're welcome. There's one thing you mentioned that I'd like to
Sure.
I think is really important for your listeners or watchers in terms of if you're experiencing anxiety and frustration of little things in running a business. I think all of that can be Sure. A business owner, in order for them to even start their business, you should not go into business just because I want to make money.
Or that I want to control over everything I do.
Right. In order for you to run a successful business and go through those ups and downs, you have to be connected to a purpose. What's your purpose for doing what you're doing? Does it connect with you? Is it something that you've wanted to do, that you've thought about, that's part of you? It might be completely different than what you went to school for. You know, we all have what I call gifts, and maybe you've been led to believe that your gift is something which it isn't, and you felt like you've been putting a square peg in a round hole your whole life, but you've always wanted to do this. Well, then maybe you should pursue that because you have a passion for that. And what gets you through the ups and downs is the purpose that has to be bigger than you. Otherwise, it won't work. My passion is helping business owners win, because when a business owner calls me up and says, Joel, we got new clients, or the first client here, that I feel so amazing. This is, and it's, yeah, I mean, we need to make money because the world is a currency-based world. But unless you're connected to doing it and you're really in with your client and passionate about what you're doing, it won't survive. So any business owner on there that is like, oh, this or that, step back a minute. If this is what you really purpose is, then get reacquainted with it. And that might bring you back to be motivated to continue.
And I think that's so true. You know, there is the idea like, okay, I'm going to make money. But if you truly aren't passionate about what you're doing and you don't feel that purpose, then when you have those struggles, the high points are easy, but the low points, you almost lose that ability to work through that. But when you have passion, that gets you through the long hours sometimes you have to put in, and some of those darkest times. I am so driven now to helping people with their people management skills. And I know that as business owners, you have the power to just tell people where to go if you want to, but you also have the power to make this great company for yourself that you're proud of, and your people are your key assets. And so whatever challenge comes, whatever time of day or night that I'm working, it's about enjoying it because the passion's there. So that's a really, really, really strong point. Let's talk now about when you sold the business, you realized that lunch that was free, that created more angst than it should have, opened your eyes to embracing a digital world. And then your next business was digital. Tell us more about what you're doing now in terms of that digital business that you've grown through IOP, PW, and now your own agency, Whirlwind.
Wow, that's a great question. Winning online requires a lot of stuff to be done. And the majority of business owners really don't know. And there's so much misinformation out there. To give you an example, I spoke to a plumber and he is advertising on Facebook. The way Facebook ads work, you're just literally hyper-targeting your ideal client, you know, demographic, psychographic, location, all of that stuff. Whereas with Google, you're actually just spreading a wide net. Someone types in a search, you're hoping to show up. So I asked him, why are you on Facebook? Because if I need a plumber, most of the time it's probably an emergency. I'm not going to Facebook. I'm going to Google right away.
Exactly.
It just makes common sense. Yep. His answer was, well, because my marketing agency said that Facebook would be cheaper. And although Facebook is cheaper every time you click on a Facebook ad than on Google, but is it still the right platform? I said, well, how's that going for you? He says, well, we got a lot of clicks, but I got no phone calls. So I suggested very lightly to run a Google campaign. And he ran a Google campaign with another agency. This was kind of at the beginning of me getting into what I'm doing with the book and stuff. Mm-hmm. And he was able to take the same amount of money, and he got a ton of responses. So he's got, the traffic was more, he got phone calls, things like small little things like that. Business owner called me up and says, now I know the difference between a landing page and a home page on my site. And I realized I didn't have to spend $5,000 on a new website. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So for me to be able to educate my clients. So if we look at, this is the journey. And for those listeners, I got my hands spread apart. Where are you on that journey? Did you just start? You need a website. You have no online presence. I can help with that. Build sites. I've got a whole global team of people and companies that I've assembled over the last 7 years that help my client through the whole journey. And while they're doing their thing, whether it's a platform or whether it's creating content I'm always in the background, making sure it's done properly until the client gets to the end. So I have access to all the people and platforms that will bring my clients to that tipping point or to get them to the next level. I'm always responsible to my clients, but I'm not responsible for my clients, because I could drive a ton of traffic to your site, and I guarantee I could do it in a way that no one else can. But so what? Are you answering your phone? Do you have something on your site that will engage with your customers when they land there? You know, are you good at selling your own products or services? So I can kind of take about 80 to 90% there. It's up to the business owner to
follow through. Yeah.
And do that. So whether that be a website or content or ads or disruptive technologies that only my team has, that gives my clients a huge advantage, I can take care of you from start to finish. So that's really what I do. So imagine Joel's up here as the Sherpa, and then I have all of these companies and people that we work together cohesively to bring you through that journey based on A, where you are, and B, what your budget is.
I want to talk now about winning online. And I think you've probably shared some tips and strategies from your book. Tell us a little bit more about the process of winning online. Was it easy to write, difficult? Give a few tips for those people who are business owners who have been told, you need to write a book, you need to write a book, you need to write a book. Give us some of that insider experience that you have, Joel.
Well, as I said before, when one person tells you something, take it with a grain of salt. That's how much you like and respect that person. It was the fall of 2018. I was mainly selling websites and a few other things that drive traffic. So what happened was, that's when an idea went on. And I said, yeah, I got my team. I'm going to be able to do everything for my client, not just some pieces. If I'm just doing a piece, that's nice, and I can really help them in that piece. But I want to make sure that they know what needs to be done, and that at least they have that knowledge and we can take them through that. So I wrote enough. I finally said, okay, I need to, when I made the connection that most business owners fail online, and then I actually figured out that formula through years of research and dealing with the right people, I was like, okay, next, I got to write a book. I need to get this knowledge into here so people can absorb that and understand. Like, for example, in my book, in the first chapter, well, my book has 10 chapters, and there's a lesson after each chapter that you can apply to your business. One of the lessons is that you must take care of yourself as a business owner. Without your health, you don't have a business. And unless you're healthy and taking care of yourself, your business is going to suffer. And that was the biggest thing that I realized from my experience. That unless you're there, nothing else matters. Without health, you have nothing. But writing the book, and I thought, okay, I'm going to write the book. And I was like, how am I going to write a book? Oh my God, it's going to take me a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. So just like I tell my coaching clients, because I also do some business coaching, I've been doing it for so long, might as well help. I say to my clients, get someone good to do what needs to be done. Don't try to do it yourself. Obviously, if you have no budget, then you have to save or do as best you can. But get people that already know and do it so you can run your business properly. So, when I talk to my clients about where their situation is, most clients have either done it themselves or trusted someone's friends, cousins, without doing enough research online to find out if that's the right fit. I'm not the right fit for everybody. I'll be the first to admit that. I'm not going to say that I'm the be-all and know-it-all. I'm just a guy that learned a lot of stuff. My whole career, as we've heard today, has been built on trial and error and experience, which is the best form of experience. So when I wrote my book, I launched my book. I started telling people about it. People were like, that's amazing. I'm so glad you wrote a book. So I figured, okay, I'll do it. At least I got a book. That'd be nice, and something nice to chalk up on the wall. By the way, writing the book, I had help, is what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
Business owners can't always take people what's in here and put it on paper, and their ideas and their visions and their goals and their passion. So you need to get a good writer. Get a good writer. If you're not a good writer, because you're still going to need to have it edited, copy edited, still got to look good, and you want to make sure it flows. So I decided, instead of it being here, do this, do this, do this, do this, I'll turn it into a story. So the book actually is a story of a lawyer that worked for a large law firm, and the character of that lawyer is my rendition of every client I've had throughout my career, all into one character. Now, I'm also in the book, but I'm not going to tell you where, and I'm not the person who you think I am. So I made it fun. It's a journey. So he goes from working at a law firm to going to do it on his own, and the trials and tribulations he goes through in order to get to where he needs to go to build his business. So it is a story, but it's wrapped around a lot of lessons. And I think that might be one of the reasons why it did become a hit, is because it's not a data dump. It's really a story I wanted to share in a way. So yeah, the book was tough to write. There was a lot of back and forth, many hours. You know, I would say what I felt and he would translate it back. And I'm like, no, you missed the point, back and forth. But it was a really, really powerful experience. It got to know myself a lot better. And I think all business owners really, you're going to go through that path. I mean, you really get to know what your passions are. I uncovered some things about myself I didn't realize. You know, and when it was finally done, I was like, and we launched, I was like, okay, no more book. Like, it was like I was so used to spending so much time. It's like coming out of the tunnel. It's like all that work and stuff is now behind you. Now you see the sun and you're like, well, wait a minute. You mean I don't have to now spend another hour today editing, or I don't have to think of this topic and I don't have to do that. Although it's hard work, it was very rewarding, extremely rewarding.
It sounds like it also gave you a kind of almost a summation of all the things that you do for business. So now it's clear in your mind what service offerings you can have. But what I also was hearing is that it gave you an understanding of yourself and some self-reflection. So you come out of it gaining from the business perspective, but also who is Joel and what is my purpose? What am I? And I heard that it's not just number one on the bestsellers under one category, but 6 categories. Is that not true?
Yeah, it is. I have the screenshots to prove it too. It was, I mean, I was in categories that I would never in a million years think I'd hit number one. Business leadership, sales and marketing, advertising. You know, it hit, I mean, with Amazon, you know, you might be number one for a day. And that journey is kind of fun too, because I hit number one in a bunch of categories, but I hit number 2 across all of the top 100 paid Kindle books in Amazon.
Oh, wow.
So number 2.
Impressive.
And I knocked Michelle Obama off number 2. I was watching because you can see.
And this is recorded live, so you can hear this for posterity.
I have the screenshots for, yeah, absolutely. And it was funny watching my book creep up, and all of a sudden one morning I get a call from my publisher saying, Joel, go on Amazon, take a look at all the top 100. I'm like, what am I looking for? He's like, your book's silly. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. So I go on and I see, and I, you know, like, so one day I see I'm number 3 or 4, 3. And then 4, then 3, then 4, then 3, then all of a sudden 2. And then Michelle Obama was at number 3, then number 4, then number 5, number 6. And I kept staying there. And I was like, wow, even Stephen Covey, I was ahead of him. But let me put that into perspective. As soon as any of those people go on stage, I'm like way off again, because they'll sell hundreds of thousands of books. But it was still nice to be able to do that. And it felt good, not just because I hit number 1. It's because so many people saw what I wrote and had value to it. Yeah, so it validated that the knowledge that as business owners, we think, yeah, what do we know?
But okay, I have to ask this question. On the pride meter of 1 to 10, how does that feel? The outcome of your book and the success. Pride meter 0 to 10, where
the pride in terms of being proud of myself for accomplishing something, 10 out of 10. Patting myself on the back, you finally did it. Good for you, Joel. You finally. But in terms of pride, in terms of, oh, look at me, you know, I'm blah, 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 blah. I've never been that way. Yeah. I have some other book author friends that are number 1 bestsellers. All of a sudden their fees went like from, you know, $400 an hour to $1,000 an hour. And that now they all no, I'm here to help.
No, you're down to earth.
I mean, my fees are my fees, because I do generally I start off with a consultation, be a consultant with the client first before we go into anything, because that's a small investment to determine whether you want to go do the rest. Some business owners, after we have that call, they're like, nope, it's not for me. I didn't realize that this is all involved. And that's okay, because, you know, that's fine with me. At least I help them to understand what they should or shouldn't do.
Yeah, yeah. What I heard through our conversation today is the desire to help people. And I think that sense of pride, too, is that this book is helping a lot of people. And I'm glad I took the effort to make that. So I like how you distinguish the different prides, right? The pride of, ooh, look at me, I made it now, versus the pride of what I accomplished. And I heard that. Thank you very much, Joel. I've enjoyed our conversation. And I look forward to the continued success of this online digital Sherpa friend of mine.